Hello, everyone, and welcome back or to the Spicy Pisces podcast. I'm your host, Emma Jepson, and I'm so happy you're here. Thank you for joining me today. So, I'm super excited for today's episode because we have on our very first guest of this podcast, Mae from at Wellness with Mae on Instagram and also her podcast handle. We first connected back in November when I joined her on our podcast to talk about cheap foods during the holiday season. And I will also link this episode in the show notes below if you do want to listen to it. And we started getting into the discussion of EDs developing in high school. So I wanted to have another convo to talk about this in more depth. So super excited to be diving into this today. Mae, thank you so much for joining. How are you doing today?
Oh, thank you so much for having me, and I'm doing really great. Thank you.
Awesome. Glad to have you. So I guess we'll just dive in right away.
Mhm.
So starting with your Instagram account, I'm curious, what inspired you to start it? Where did the idea come from, as well as your podcast?
Yeah. So back in 2021, I think I had been struggling with my ED for a while. And I was at a point where, like, yes, I could now identify certain behaviors that were more diet culture and more eating disorder behaviors. Like beforehand, in the height of my eating disorder, I was just ignoring them and pushing them to the side, and kind of listening to the voices. But once I started recognizing these behaviors, I was not really fully recovered, but I did want some accountability on my ED recovery journey. And that's why I wanted to be a part of the Instagram community, the wellness part of it, and not only for myself, but also to help others in recovery. And I started that eating disorder account just to spread information, maybe like enjoy recovery as much as I could, maybe the journey instead of just being alone. And I think just having that experience and being relatable to my audience was really key. And actually, Brie Lenahan, she's my
Hmm.
inspiration. She's very body positive and just helping a lot of people with their eating disorders. So I think that's really what kicked me off for my Instagram. And after a while, because I was just like making captions at that point, it almost
Hmm.
just felt like a blog. I wanted to really put my voice out there and get more personal with my audience. So I felt like that podcast did that for me.
Awesome. I absolutely love your page and your podcast as well. And I totally agree with that's kind of why I started my podcast too, because I love Instagram and the community on there, but it feels very short form and you can't really get all of your ideas and your personality and voice across. So I think the
Exactly.
podcast is a great path to take. And I also think with the Instagram account as well, like being able to talk about your voice and connect with these other people and just know that like you're not alone in what you're struggling with is incredible as well. So love that you started a page
Thank
dedicated to
you.
recovery. Um, so I guess diving into the next question, when would you say your eating disorder developed? And can you trace it back to one specific turning point, or was it more so a culmination of many factors combined, and then there was like a tipping point?
hmm I know the year and like it was basically March 2020, that time of COVID, like the first pandemic, the first quarantine like wave. And it did start from like one factor, but I'll get to that in a second. So with the first quarantine, everyone was cooped up at home. Like a typical Northeast girl, I was involved in different sports and swimming was my main sport. So that was just my main form of exercise. I didn't think much of it because it was just I was going through the motions. And then when quarantine happened, and I had to actually figure out, how am I gonna start working out now? Because I should probably stay a little bit fit and a little bit in shape so that when I come back, I'm not totally ruined. But I took 2 weeks off, and then I stepped on the scale, just out of like innocent curiosity. Again, wasn't thinking too much of it. And compared to the last time I had weighed myself for like doctor purposes, a yearly checkup, I had gained like maybe about 5, 10 pounds. And that like really alarmed me. And I was very impressionable at that age, 13 years old. You're thinking, oh my God, there's something wrong with me. Like this shouldn't be happening. And I've heard of eating disorders before. Again, didn't think much of it. And that was when I felt like in shock, like, oh my God, I have to get into a really workout obsessed mood. And I started restricting calories. I started going on YouTube and doing like any YouTube video that said burn 500 calories in like 10 minutes or like get abs in 10 days, the Chloe Ting challenge. I
Hmm.
still remember the music, the robotic music
Yeah.
coming for that. It was good for the core, it was not good for my mindset. And I just became very body conscious and eventually it got worse and worse. I started cutting out more foods. My metabolism was going down and down. I kept gaining weight because high intensity and just high
Hmm.
intensity more and more. You're like you're sweating, you're swelling, like that's what your body just
Hmm.
naturally does when you're in that state of mind. And then suddenly like I got an Apple Watch because
Mm.
I was very in that health mindset. So I just started counting calories even more. And my all my social media feeds came from like at first it was like books I loved and music I liked, and then now it's turning into like models and restriction and lowest calorie foods and meals that you can make. But then by April-ish, like so a year later, when I was in eighth grade, I came across, like I said earlier, Brie Lenahan and her authentic, like real body posts, and especially for women when you go through different stages of the month, like your period, your body changes. And I just wasn't aware of that beforehand. And I feel like that maybe normalize more of like my bloating and just be okay with eating and like kind of quieting the eating disorder
Hmm.
voices. And so then my mindset shifted and I started to begin to accept myself. I started my Instagram account, which definitely helped me account with accountability. And that's kind of how I found my passion for health and wellness.
Awesome. I love that. And I know COVID was such a weird time too, because I guess social media was kind of getting a lot more prevalent at that point, but then everyone was
Yes,
on their phones and the
exactly.
feeds start off kind of innocent. And then there's like an insidious twist where you start seeing more diet culture content and everyone's at home more. So then Chloe Ting workouts as well. I definitely know that
Exactly.
too well.
Yeah. And I
And it
feel
just
like,
became,
oh, sorry, go ahead.
no, 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 you go.
I felt like being around just like my family the whole time. It's
Hmm.
always a good thing, but then you become more conscious about any comments they may be making,
Totally.
like, oh, you gotta stay more fit, like don't let no swimming like be the ruin of you, like keep going, stay athletic. And I was
Hmm.
known at the time for like being very skinny, like being able to eat whatever I want. And so
Mm.
over time that became a part of my identity. And now that I'm looking back, I'm like, that's not healthy for anyone. Um,
Yeah,
like when I raise my own kids one day, that's not going to be part of whatever conversation's happening in the house.
totally.
But yeah, it's just like teens are so impressionable and you have to be very careful with, I guess, what you're exposing yourself to.
Totally. And I think that's like the main factor because at that age, you're not able to necessarily form your own opinions and you're pulling from other people's perceptions. And instead of checking in with yourself and being like, do I align with this? You don't really know what your values are at that point. But I also
Exactly.
think that's interesting, what you said, that was part of your identity at the time. Because
Yeah.
I know when I was working out pretty much every single day, and I was like dropping some weight and I looked
Mhm.
more quote unquote athletic, that became almost part of like people would, I was seeking the validation and the compliments that people were giving me. And I just thought it was like part of who I was and learning to detach my appearance and those habits from my worth and how I like what I like kind of count myself to be and removing those too is very
Exactly.
interesting as well. But I guess two questions.
Mhm.
First one, oh, sorry.
You're fine.
First one related to the identity thing. How have you learned to kind of separate the two, or how was that process of um, maybe learning that like your appearance and your fitness levels don't necessarily correlate to your worth or who you are and how people should value you? And then also back to the impressionable thing and social media as well. Why do you think it's so much worse today than it was even like 5 years ago? Because I know when I was in high school, TikTok wasn't really around when I was, a freshman, sophomore. It was more so like Netflix shows. And I know
Yes,
Riverdale was
yes.
a big one for me because you see these people that are 25, 30 something years old playing teenagers, and you're like, why
Mhm.
don't I look like this person when
Exactly.
they're like fully developed and they're doing this professionally and this is their job? So curious what your take is on that being in high school now as well.
Yeah. So I'll address the first question, kind of detaching myself from the identity that I'm like the healthy person in the family. I still haven't been able to fully detach myself from that yet, but I have kind of adopted or like I still hold on to the healthy kind of part, but I've kind of
Mm-hmm.
like added on something more like educating my family about what's
Mm-hmm.
actually healthy and what's actually not toxic. So at first it became like I'm the one that exercised every day. I did a lot of cardio. I did a lot of hit. But now it's transitioned into, yes, I'm promoting my family to eat like more whole foods while also
Mm-hmm.
adding in like your typical junk food, like whatever you're craving, honor your cravings, honor your hunger, you do you. Also like kind of just letting them know like, car like running on the treadmill is not gonna um like make you lose weight and whatever because my mom like or certain people
Hmm.
in my family, not
Hmm.
just one person, but like multiple people are like, oh, I'm gonna run on the treadmill and oh, I didn't eat breakfast today and oh, I like burned 200 calories, like all this negative talk,
Hmm.
which is very overwhelming. So I kind of became the person or like the identity in my family to like try to stop that and actually educate them on what's real and what's like actual like good behaviors and strategies instead of just doing a lot of eating disorder, like diet culture talk that's so prevalent in our society today. So like one example would be like the add over restrict diet and things like that. Also just embracing different parts of me that I now take interest in. So if someone has a hobby, like let's just say our listeners like music and they like playing piano or drums or something like that, go deeper into that instead of just focusing and making your whole life about health and wellness. Like I saw this one quote that was like, don't make exercise your whole life, just make it a part of it.
Hmm.
And that's definitely important because you are not a person that is just like all about exercise. You're a person with diverse interests and you want to
Hmm.
delve deeper into that and don't be afraid to. So, music, baking, cooking, running, like those are my hobbies, but you can definitely have something else, reading, anything really. And then addressing your second question about it was like, oh, why we're so impressionable, right? At our age.
Yeah, and like social media growing up in high school for you right now, because I know it's changed since I was in high school as well, and like just being a teenager in general.
Mhm. Yeah, definitely. Similar to you, I feel like TikTok is doing something like how Netflix, you saw all these bodies on camera, or like Disney Plus even, just like, oh, why can't I be like them? Like, why are they so skinny?
Hmm.
Why is it so effortless for them? And one person that really stuck out to me at that age was Olivia Rodrigo. Just because High School Musical, the musical, the series was like really
Hmm.
popular. And I just remember like seeing how effortlessly like skinny she was and just comparing myself to that a lot. Especially when you see like people on screen that are similar in age to you, you tend to
Hmm.
compare. And I feel like not only Netflix does that, but TikTok, like you said, like there's information that comes in, like whipped coffee trend, and then suddenly it's like exercise, how to get abs in 10 days. Like it all just flows so easily into your feed based on what everyone else is watching. And health has definitely become more important in that. So, yeah, that's definitely been a shocker to me. And the
Hmm.
fact that eating disorders are being more openly portrayed in the media today, like whether it's a TV show or a documentary or something like that, just the idea of health is really overwhelming to a lot of people and coming in from all different
Hmm.
directions, wherever you are. Like even sometimes songs, they mention like my only way,
Totally.
whatever, like blah blah blah. Um, it's just not healthy for the mind. And I feel like with this like overstimulation, these kids like my age, younger, a little bit older, are just getting really overwhelmed with that. So they tend to compare. And you even hear things like, oh, Kim Kardashian went on that extreme diet to fit into Marilyn Monroe's dress. Like that gets
Hmm.
popular really quick. And then makes you think, oh my goodness, like I need to lose weight too. Like I should start
Hmm.
restricting. But it's just like not healthy and not sustainable for the long term.
Totally. And there's so much, I totally agree with that. There's so
Yeah.
much it's so widely available
Yes.
nowadays, especially with TikTok. And like you said, there's so many different perspectives. And when you're a teenager, you don't necessarily know if you didn't grow up in a household where it was openly talked about in a
Mhm.
positive way or even a negative way, and you started doing some reflection on it yourself. I feel like it's so hard to filter everything and figure out what's actually truthful, what's actually reliable information, who you can
Yeah.
trust. Like it's, and like you said, you're just scrolling so quickly and you're
Yeah,
consuming so much content. It just subconsciously you're just internalizing everything when you don't even realize it. And
exactly.
I totally agree with the Marilyn Monroe. I remember hearing about that, and she lost a bunch of weight. And I think I don't know if it was just Kim or some of the other family members, but I know they took out some of their like implants and stuff because they said skinny's
Yes.
back, like the 90s. So they're
Yeah.
just literally all the body trends, it's all persisting and they're kind of just promoting it. And I don't even think they realize how maybe they do, but they're making millions off of this, so maybe they don't care
Yes.
either. But so
Definitely.
many people look up to them for these trends and they're just promoting. you can just lose weight and take Ozempic or something. And
Exactly.
when
It's
you're
not.
like, a teenager, you don't realize that this is not actually like you're looking up to these people when you shouldn't really be looking up to them because they're promoting insanely toxic beliefs. But I think, like you
Exactly.
said, when this is the only content you're really consuming, you just kind of start to believe it and pick up on it yourself as well.
Exactly. And what you just said about like body trends, I completely forgot about that. But touching on that, like bodies can't change from like thick to skinny to hourglass to like whatever. Like that's not how bodies work. So
Mhm.
to anyone listening, just be happy with whatever you like, whatever you look like. All body shapes are beautiful and you don't have to change yourself for that.
Totally. I love that so much. And I know it's just like there's going to constantly be changing your entire life. So just be happy with the one you have right now and just ride throughout life in the body you have right now and as it changes, because I guess like you said before, you don't need to just focus on food. There's so much more to life than the way you look and the workouts you do and the food you consume. So I love that as well. And I think just going back to the growing up in the household then where diet culture was kind of talked about and these comments were being made, that's something I definitely experienced as well. And I've had a lot of open conversations with family members about this stuff. And like you said, still promoting health in a positive way. So whole foods, moving your body in ways that feel good, staying active for like your mental health, aging purposes, but also maybe letting them know that this comment's not okay to make, or maybe you shouldn't be promoting this or hyper fixating on this like you are, because it's really not healthy. How has that been having these conversations? And was there any like pushback at first, or were you kind of anxious, or how did it start and how is it now?
Yeah, so at first it started like they were kind of like, oh, okay. They just dismissed me. It was a little
Hmm.
indifferent, very passive because well, I'm a teenager. I don't know what I'm talking about. But as I kept talking more and more, like, yes, I actually do know my facts. I do know my information. There's science to back it. There has been pushback, like arguments like, oh no, but this said this. And they see like, I guess because they're an older generation, I don't really know if they
Totally.
really do the research.
Yeah.
Yeah, that generational difference. They just see like whatever's sponsored, the top thing on Google, and that's still part of diet culture. Like whatever's being sponsored is diet culture just trying to sell you products. So they're like, oh no, like the keto diet is gonna really like help me in intermittent fasting. And then I say like, okay, like you do you, but just saying like that might worsen your hormones or make your blood sugar like wacky and things like that, like skipping breakfast to save calories. And there's been like arguments sometimes that
Mm.
still go on, I'm not gonna lie, but maybe certain things have kind of like been influenced onto them from me, like in a healthier way. Like now my like it's hard to like not call out, but like they're fine with like eating carbs now, and it's just
Got it.
like small things, small things.
Got it. Got it. Yeah. That's great though that you've helped them kind of relearn your relationship with food, because it's
Exactly.
not something that people, because you go to therapy for a lot of people go to therapy for childhood, but there's so many other parts of your life that could use a little, I guess, unlearning and re-educating. And I think
Exactly.
that's great that you're doing that with food as well, because
Thank you.
you don't need to live a life where food is this like thing you put on a pedestal and is
Right.
something you hyper fixate on in your life, because um, it's just really toxic and takes a toll on you mentally.
Yeah.
Um, and I
Oh, yeah.
No,
Sorry.
go ahead, go ahead.
Oh, I'm sorry. There's just like one thing that you reminded me of. Like I remember one of my oh yeah, my parents were saying like, "Oh, I ate so much less at your age," or like I
Mm,
wasn't as like muscular at your age, and so, like
mm,
like teenagers, like 13-year-olds, 14-year-olds, that's really rough on the brain. Like it makes you insecure. Not that being muscular or eating more is a bad thing, but your parents make you think it's a bad thing, or your family or your aunts or whatever, like at a party, and it's just like, oh wow, she can eat a lot. Those kind of comments are like kind of irked me.
totally,
But anyway, I'm sorry, what
totally.
were you gonna say?
No, no, no. I think that's a great point to make as well, because I remember my mom. She was the biggest, I guess, because she grew up, one, she's a female, and she grew up in, so she was born in India, but she came to the US when she was like 19. So she didn't even, like, I guess when she first got here, it was like the 90s then. So that's just, she was trying to like assimilate to the culture as well, and that's kind of what she thought was normal to pick up on. And you see like Kate Moss and these
Oh yeah.
magazines and stuff, and you're like, I want to be like her, like so I totally now we've had more open conversations and like you said, the generational gap, that's just what they know and what
Mhm.
they think is the right thing to think. So we've had many arguments over comments she's made. Like I remember I was going to brunch with a friend and it was like an hour drive and I was leaving in like 30 minutes. So I made like a small bowl of oatmeal before and she's like, "Oh, like aren't you going to brunch?" I was like, "Yeah." She's like, "Oh, like do you need to eat right now or something?" She's like, "If you're eating later." And I kind of just in the past I would have freaked out and like
Yeah.
lost it, but I've also been learning to like recognize that they're just coming from their own point of view and they might not mean it in a
Yeah.
malicious way. They think they're actually being helpful. So I just took a minute to like sit with myself and just say, like, I'm hungry right now, so I'm gonna like honor my hunger cues
Exactly.
at this moment and I'll eat when I get there. I don't need to eat a lot if I'm not as hungry then, but I'm hungry right now, so I'm gonna eat.
Yeah.
And I kind of just told her that and just like left the room then.
Yeah,
But that's
period. Remove
definitely been
yourself. Yeah.
yeah, but that's been the comments are just really hard. But I
It's
think
good
just
that
like
you set up boundaries for that.
yeah, which has been hard. But I'm glad to hear as well you've kind of been working on that because it's home life and coming to college has been nice as well. Being able to kind of get away from some of that and then go back for breaks and summer break and stuff and having a little bit more awareness about how I want to talk about things has been really cool. But that's great to hear you're kind of doing that now at your age, which is incredible.
Thank you. You
Um,
too.
Yeah, and I think the comments can be really hard sometimes, but it's good to kind of speak up and say if something's bothering you, or like you said, just remove yourself if people are having a conversation about something that's triggering you. Totally, you've every right to get up and leave if it's bothering you. I think just like letting people know as well if something they're doing is triggering you, because I feel like a lot of people get so caught up in their own everything going on up in their head and also people can't read your mind so if something is bothering you they might not even know what you're going through yourself so I think if it's someone you really love and trust and you think they're going to hear your point of view you have every right to go have a conversation with them about whatever it is that's bothering you um
Totally.
and I think like two more points for like the kind of like in high school so you kind of mentioned before comparison to other girls. I know online it's a huge thing, but I'm curious what it's like going into school every day and being around
Yeah.
these people in sports and clubs and other activities and stuff. And then also the whole male gaze, but then also going along with that, just gender stereotypes and expectations of what the female gender is supposed to look like. I'm curious what your perspective is on that.
Yeah. So I guess going into school like in person, especially at an all-girls school, like there's
Oh,
like a
okay.
lot of talk about like, oh my God, like I wish I was skinny. Like my friend recently was just having a conversation with me. We're talking about prom dresses because, it's
Hmm.
exciting, it's fun. And she's like, oh, my sister's dress fit her so well. Like her stomach is so flat, it's so skinny, like it's unfair. Okay, first of all, why are you comparing yourself to your sister like that?
Mm-hmm.
And this girl that I was talking to, she is very much skinnier than me. So, and I think she knows that because it's just visually like
Yeah.
apparent. So the
You
fact
feel
that
like
she's
shit then.
exactly like, I'm not the target audience for this conversation. Let me it was not healthy. And there's always that desire to fit in as well. And when you
Mm,
see athletic girls, like there are some, I guess, more muscled girls, depending on your sport, which no one has really like, oh my God, she's so muscular. Like no one has really said that. Like it's generally a body neutral environment, my school. But again, that's just my school. I don't know about other girls. There's still that desire to be skinny, be fit, because we see all these models, we're girls, like we involve ourselves in girl culture. Like,
hmm.
that bow trend going around,
Oh,
like
which one is that?
the coquette one. I don't know. And
No,
like the ballerina trend.
I don't, I deleted TikTok, so I'm
Oh,
like
oh,
removed
wait, you
from
know
all
what?
this.
That's healthy. That's also a boundary that you can set. But anyway, yeah,
Feel
it's
free
just,
to explain it though, if it's like
yeah.
for anyone that
Um,
doesn't know who's listening.
Yeah, definitely. So the coquette trend is basically like it's just like putting bows on everything. So like you have a phone, you put a bow, it's cute. And then like it came from like ballerinas basically, because
Got
whatever
it.
their hair, their shoes, everything like that. And it's kind of just, again, like reiterated skinny culture in a way. Um, yeah, and then comparing yourself to people that are similar to you in high school, you tend to go into groups of people that share like similar interests as you or a
Hmm.
similar culture. For me, like for the people I have a similar culture with, like I it was very unhealthy at the start. I tended to compare my body type to theirs just because, oh, we eat like the same foods, like the same culture,
Hmm.
who's better? And that mindset is so unhealthy because one body is not better than the other just because of how much you weigh or how small you look like. Like that's not how it should work. But I tended to do that and I was like, oh my God, she's so much skinnier than me. Like, how is that fair? Like I'm Chinese, so she was like eating rice and I was restricting from rice at the time. This sounds so stereotypical, but like it made me like more mad at myself for like just my
Yeah.
genetics. Why can't I be like her? Like, why am I more wide or and why is she more skinny and why doesn't she like have such big muscles or whatever? Like, I don't have big muscles. I'm not built in any way. I'm not that strong. But I do swimming and she did volleyball. So she was
Okay.
just more of like the quote unquote correct proportions is what I'm saying.
Hmm.
So there's a lot of comparison there. There's also comparison with girls in your class year, whether it's, the clothes you wear. Like Lululemon is very popular in my school. So if you didn't have that, you were kind of just like, and also like Lululemon, Brandy Melville is really big in my class.
Brandy
And
Melville.
yes, and they're very popular for only having like skinny clothes and skinny
Hmm.
what is it like
Like
sales
the one size. Yeah.
exactly one size fits all. And I even heard one time like the doors getting into Brandy Melville are even like tinier than normal doors, so
Oh
it's
my
just
God.
oh,
Of course.
that's crazy to me. But yeah, just so much comparison going around plus social media and everything. It's just so overwhelming.
Totally. I think that was like a huge thing for me too. I know a lot of my friends were, I was like, I'm only 5'3", so a lot of people tend to be taller than me, but
Yes, yeah.
my friend group, I was the shortest one, but like there was friends like kind of in between, but like I know a few of them were like 6 foot, 5'10", and like you said, they kind of did track like cross country or volleyball, so they had more of the taller, leaner build that was kind of that's still pretty much kind of idolized. And I was like, why don't I have their height, their legs, their stomach, their build? And I was comparing myself to part like the way they looked essentially. And that was so hard as well because you go to the mall with them then, or you go shopping, or you're trying on prom dresses, like you said,
Exactly. Yeah.
and you're just comparing the way you look and then how they look and what they're wearing. And I know prom was really hard for me as well, seeing other people dressed up in dresses that maybe I wish I could wear and look good in, but I didn't think I would look good in because maybe my stomach wasn't the same way theirs was, or waist, or whatever it might have been. But that was really hard for me as well because I'm trying to like now I've been kind of looking back on where that was coming from, but I think I'm kind of starting to realize now there's a whole, just with women in general, it's very, very competitive with like appearances and not even like male gaze, like even if not even if you're attracted to guys, but there's this whole like I what's it called? Someone had like a term for it, but it's basically like because she's so pretty, that means like I'm not pretty, or because she is skinny, that makes me fat. Kind of like you
Yeah.
said, like when your friend was making that comment that she felt fat, like that kind of like she's saying like I don't know if you kind of get what I'm saying. I forget
Yeah, yeah,
exactly
no,
what the
totally.
video was or what they were talking about, but there's like this whole competitive nature with women where we just tear down each other for some
Mhm.
reason, even if we're not verbally saying it, even if it's like
Exactly.
internalized. And I think a mantra I've been trying to tell myself is if someone says another girl's really pretty or kind of makes a comment about the way she looks at something, that doesn't mean I'm the opposite of that. So that's been something I've been trying to work on. But I think in high
Yeah.
school, I didn't, I kind of took it personally that I'm like, oh, if they're saying she's looks really whatever, like they wish they could look like her and I look nothing like this girl, then that means something's wrong with me then. And
Yeah.
that was something I internalized a lot in high
Totally.
school.
Yeah. Oh, and what you were saying about your friends like being taller than you, I completely understand. I'm 5'1", so like we're in the same boat here. We're like small, petite, and then they're just like tall, lean, and sh it's like a lot of comparison that goes on. And also like sometimes at lunch, I just see like
Mm,
I compare the different foods that we eat. And then like they're eating pasta, bagels, like quote unquote healthy, unhealthy foods. And then I was eating like healthier stuff, but somehow I was still not
mm.
necessarily the skinniest one, and I think that really played a toll on my mindset when I was in like freshman, sophomore year.
Totally agree with that as well. And if someone comes into school and they say, all I had today was like a granola bar or something, or they just had an iced coffee or something like that, you're kind of all like internalizing everything they're saying. And also at lunch, like you said, comparing what you eat to other people's and how much of whatever you're eating. And if you like order a pizza one night or something, you're like, why do they still get to look like this? And it affects me more than it affects them, or something like that. And I think something I've also noticed and seen in a lot more content on, I forget the exact person when I first saw it, but you're not seeing the whole picture a lot of the time. So one person might be saying, "Oh, I wish had her willpower. I can only eat as little as she's eating and still look the same way." Whereas she's thinking, "Oh, I wish I had the relationship with food that she does, where she's able to eat as much as she wants and she's not restricting." Like you're not seeing what's going on inside of people's heads and the battles they're fighting or the thoughts kind of running through their mind.
Exactly.
So that's been great to kind of realize, but I think in high school you don't realize that you're just from your own level of perception, that's what you're thinking, and you think everyone else kind of thinks the same way.
Yeah.
But I'm curious what that's been like for you as well, and how you've worked on it or like reframed your mindsets anytime it might trigger you.
Yeah, like sometimes I just go out to dinner with my friends and I'm used to eating like the more restrictive kind of food and then they just eat, I guess, like whatever my fear foods were. Like they would eat pasta, they would eat pizza,
Mm,
garlic bread, like really easily because we go out for Italian food a lot. And I'm just like, how is it so easy for them? But
hmm
like you said, they might be struggling with something like inside. And so I just kind of remind myself everyone is on a different stage in their journey. Yes, this may be like a mental fight between me and my eating disorder voices. For me, that's my personal battle. But like they might be struggling with something different for them. Like it could be something totally different that I didn't think of. Like it could be financial problems, it could be academic problems. Mine is simply like my own. And compared to a lot of different problems going on today, I remind myself like this is just a small bump in the road.
hmm
Not to say that your problems are invalid or whatever you're going through is invalid, but just to think like big picture wise, you can get through this, you can get past whatever you're getting, like whatever struggles you're having right now.
Totally. I love that so much, and I think just like reminding yourself that it is possible to recover and like feel better and get better as well. 'Cause a lot of the times when you're stuck in the thick of it, it feels like you can't change your mindset or get out of it, and you feel kind of stuck in whatever's going on in your life, even if it has nothing to do with food. And like you said, it's something totally different. So I think that's great to remember. Um, Kind of going along with the whole friendship thing. And like you said, you kind of become friends with people that have similar interests and maybe values as you at the time. And I know we see in TV and movies and TikTok and also just being in person at school. I remember in high school, I had a really great friend group, but I guess kind of like two questions within this then. The first one, we never really openly talked about food though. Like even though we did enjoy each other's company, like you don't have these deeper level conversations at that age where you're talking about these things. At least I didn't have friends like that till probably end of senior year. So I'm curious, like if you're able to openly talk about it with friends or if like your account as well, if they follow you and engage with your content and kind of understand like they want to help you and like they understand not to say certain things around you and kind of like that. But then
Mhm.
also with these popularity, I guess, images that you kind of see like certain people in school, they're quote unquote popular, and a lot of the times they have a very specific appearance and image to them. And I think you almost want to like, because they look so cool and their lives are so awesome because they have this huge friend group and they just like look like you put them up on this pedestal and they're like a
Yes.
god or something. And you're like, I want to be like them. like I
Yeah.
need to look like that to feel like them, but also you don't even know what they're struggling with themselves, and it might not be as awesome as you make it out to be. Like, standing in their shoes, or like everyone has their own battles, and like just because someone looks a certain way doesn't mean that they have it like easy and everything in their life is incredible. And I think that's also something I've had to realize as well. But curious for you with the friends then, so like open conversations, and then also the whole, if the popularity thing is kind of still around today, and what your experience has been with that.
Mm. Yeah. So, with my friend group, I actually they don't know about my account because it's
That's
just
right.
very
Yes.
personal to me. And
Yes.
like
We talked about that.
oh, okay, yeah. And I feel like if they knew about it, like I don't want them to think I'm like a pick me or anything or that because I don't come off like that at school at all. Like I don't talk about food that much. Like I think
Got
like
it.
I love food. I'm like, "Oh my God, I really want to try this." Like, "Oh my gosh, it's so cool. What is that?" And like food really spikes my curiosity, but um I just like I don't know, like I hide it. I don't know why. I think it's just because it's really personal to me and I
Totally.
want
It's,
them to
yeah.
know that I struggled with it. Like when they see me, I don't want them to think, "Oh my gosh, she has an eating disorder." Like I don't want that to be the first thing they think of me.
Got
So
it.
I try to just take on a different personality, but I have talked about like other people in my school struggling with eating disorders. Like we used to have like a really big friend group and then some people left and one of the people that left was actually going through like a lot of like diet culture stuff because she would say things like, no, I can't eat croutons, guys. Like I'm going through a diet cleanse and no, I
Mm,
can't, I'm going on a diet. How much calories does this have? How much sugar? That has no sugar. This energy drink has no sugar. Oh my God, like give that to me. And it was just very like obvious and it was very noticeable. And we are still friends with her right now. Just not as close, but sometimes we are a little bit like worried about her, like hoping that she's healthy and whatever. But I knew like in the way that we were never talking about her negatively. We were just looking out for her. And I
got
know that
it.
they knew about like my own struggles and they would just be looking out for me. But then again, it's just that's a different part of my life that I don't want them to be involved with. So they like just so it doesn't clash. And
Hmm.
the popularity thing. I think it's not as like prevalent in my school. Like honestly, the popular kids are a diverse like body range, which is honestly so nice. Um,
Hmm.
it really doesn't make you want to be them as much. And my class is very small, so like we're 60 people. So I'm in some of the classes with the popular girls, and we have very different goals. And I know that they sometimes struggle academically or athletically, and they complain about these problems openly because we're like almost like a sisterhood. So I feel like they're not as much on a pedestal as for me, but probably in public schools, there's definitely like popular names that go around. Like even me, I've never been in my town's public school, but I've heard of these names and I'm just like, oh my
Hmm.
God, I wish I was them. Like they're cheerleaders, they're like
Hmm.
lacrosse players, and I'm like, oh, wish I could be them sometimes. And they're like the petite size that is very popular right now. But yeah, there's definitely like some sort of pedestal still going around.
Totally. And yeah, I think it just comes, like you said before, the whole wanting to fit in. And at that age, you're still seeking validation from other people. And um, like that's like your main goal in life. Like you just want to fit in and be seen and be liked. And you think like they look this way and they have all these friends and everyone is in love with them, like that you want to be them then, because you're like, what is it like to feel like have
Yeah.
all the eyes on you, and everyone kind of looks up to you. But like you said, also everyone has their own struggles. So, and also you shouldn't be basing the way you value someone or how cool they are based on the way they look. Like there's so much more to people than just the way you look as well. Um, and what was I gonna say? Also, the talking about your account too. So I
Mhm.
remember I started it going into my junior year of high school, but I didn't tell anyone outside of my immediate family about it until um like spring of senior year. And that's the first person I told was my best friend. And she was
Oh.
like, I was like, we stopped in like the parking lot to talk. And I was like, I have to tell you something. And she got so
Oh my
scared.
God.
She thought I
Yeah.
was gonna say like, I don't know, I was pregnant, or like I got like I don't know, some like I don't
That's
know,
so
like something
funny.
insane. I was like, I have a food account. She's like, she like smacked me. She's like, you scared me.
Yeah.
But she was like, and I totally like understand, like it's because it's such a personal,
Exactly.
intimate thing. Because this is still, it could be the stigma, then it could just be also mental health. It's really hard to talk about because it's like your own personal struggles, and that's hard to open up about online. But then in person, it's almost even harder because you're like faced and actually having these conversations and seeing how people kind of perceive it and where they're coming from with their level of perception, if they're going to support you or maybe treat you differently. So I totally understand. And I think like that's great if you're comfortable with kind of keeping it like on the deal right now and just having it be like more of this online community. I think that's great
Thank you.
as well. And then also the fact that you guys are able to have these conversations about the other friend that left your group and wanting to support her as well and look out for her. I think that's great as well. And I know, I think until I got to college, I started meeting people where we actually like talked about these things, and it's just been a game changer seeing that other people kind of think the same way and have the same conversations about these topics that I have been having with these people online. Um, so I think that's then like also when you're younger, you don't really, like I said, have these open conversations. So it's kind of hard if you're like, no one else thinks this way that I do being in recovery, but then they're thinking, so like, I don't want to, they're going to think I'm weird if I say this comment or say
Exactly.
like, oh, maybe don't make this comment about not eating that much. Like that triggers me. They're going to be like, "Ooh, you're out of the friend group. Like you're
Yeah,
booted. Like what
yeah.
was that?" Because you're
So
so caught
many.
up in like, yeah,
Yeah.
wanting to fit in. But I guess just last kind of point on this, like being the whole kind of like in high school and where these EDs and disordered eating habits kind of stem from. I think you're also at the age where, because you're a senior right now, correct?
I'm a junior.
Junior. Okay, got it. So, like, probably taking harder classes, maybe looking at colleges, thinking about possibly moving away from home, and then also just getting a little bit older, you start getting kind of stressed out with so many things going on in your life, and then also the pressure to fit in, look a certain way. I think, especially for me, I didn't have proper outlets at the time, and I didn't know how to cope with stress. Like there, none of my parents really openly, now we do, but at the time we didn't openly talk about mental health. No one in my family went to therapy at the time. Like,
Same.
yeah, and they're like, you should just be able to handle all the stress. Like you're young, like you've whatever, like you can, like you have friends, you have sports, like you should be fine. Like, like nothing should be wrong with you or nothing should be going um like, and also they didn't know the extent to what I was dealing with because I didn't openly voice it until further down the line. But I think I just internalized all the stress with obviously diet culture, body image pressures, but all the other stress I was dealing with, I channeled it into food. And that's kind of what drove my ED to the extent in which it kind of went to. Um, so I'm curious about like how you've, if stress was a factor for you, how you've learned to like have other outlets. Like I know you said you like to run and like bake, so maybe those are other outlets for you. And then also just like having these support networks as well. What has your experience been like with that?
Yeah. So you're correct, very correct. I'm like so stressed about college and applications and hard classes and everything. It's like my body or like my mind is at least splitting into two. There's like one stuck right now where I am. So it's just like fitting into all the body like expectations, which shouldn't really be a thing, but that kind of part of my life. And then also looking into the future, thinking about like more, I guess, adult problems like job, career, major, like
Mhm.
it's making me very like conflicted. Like, okay, what should I be focusing on at this point? And you're right in the sense that I am looking at my past hobbies, so like running, baking, cooking. Those are what I find comfort in. But at the same time, sometimes I do stress eat when the stress just gets
Mhm.
so high. And that came from actually my mom because she also stress eats like she loves salty foods like high sodium and things like that. And that's how she copes with stress because she came from the Philippines actually, so like third world countries. I know you said your mom came from India, and so
Yeah,
maybe there's like, some alignment, like immigrants don't
yeah.
think that therapy is
There's a
needed.
lot of stigma. Yeah, they think you should
Exactly.
just be fine. You shove it down under the carpet, like.
exactly. Like there's people surviving their own countries. Why can't you survive in,
Hmm.
the US and like
Totally.
decent middle class home? And I'm just like, okay, you have a point, you have a point. But there
Hmm.
comes to a point where sometimes some people do need support. So
Hmm.
I also kind of struggle with like finding that support, but I have found that, through my Instagram account, through being able to actually just like vent and talk on my podcast,
Totally.
yours as well, very helpful. But that's kind of just like the scene I'm in right now.
Totally. I think that's great that like your kind of Instagram account and podcast serve as your outlet. I know when I'm just talking to myself on the microphone in my room, like it's just so cathartic to be talking. Because I'm not even, it's like it was weird at first, but now it's just like a free therapy session for me, just talking about things. And I think it's really great.
Yeah.
Um, and I think also with I want to talk about the stress eating quickly, and then also like the the kind of like the culture as well, like with the stigma, because I know my mom, she's very open about mental health now because she's gone through her own things and done a lot of reflecting and she's gone to therapy. But I know back home, like her family there, like
Mm.
anytime someone had a mental health struggle, like it wasn't a thing. You just kept it within the immediate family. Like no one else knew about it. But you were just like, I don't know, like you found ways to fix it that weren't really fixing it. It was just like covering it up. And
Yeah.
also, like, I think sometimes my parents now will be making comments about how people are kind of softer now and people aren't like, I don't know, people treat other people with too much, like, I don't know, like people are like too weak nowadays. That's
Yeah.
basically what
No,
they're
same.
saying.
Same here. Yeah.
Yeah. And I'm like, I think the main part why they assume that is because people are just talking about things more openly. If something bothers them, they're saying it bothers them. People are crying more freely now because they know there shouldn't be stigma around something. But um, with like the food as well, like you should just be able to fix it or it shouldn't be an issue, you know?
Mhm.
So I think just like reminding yourself if your parents kind of have these perspectives or views on things, like it's okay to not be okay and to seek help and you shouldn't feel ashamed if you need to ask for help or therapy or just crying to someone about something if you need or like just like saying you're not okay. I think even that goes far beyond food as well, but even anything at all, just asking for
Yeah.
help as well. And I think that was like a turning point in my ED, actually going to them and being like, I'm not okay. Like I need something to help me. I need to like go to therapy or something like that. I'm not okay. And then they finally, now we have more open conversations about these things.
Good.
Um, but they still have that stigma a little bit where they're like, you Gen Z is like too weak or whatever. But that's a whole nother topic as well. But I
No, I
think with
totally get that. Yeah. I
yeah.
think it's just ingrained in them because I mean, different
Hmm.
upbringing, different generation, like even different countries, like it's
Yeah,
just that's overall. Yeah.
totally. And I think with the stress eating as well, and like binging as well, that was something my mom had growing up, and she'd go on all these diets and these different, like every other week it was like a new thing she was trying out, whether it was like the Weight Watchers or like a juice cleanse or whatever it might have been. And you kind of see like the restricting and then the binging
Yeah.
part of it, and then like stress eating from work as well. That's something I internalized and struggled with um myself, but I'm curious like what your experience was with like how, like I guess actually specifically what was your, I guess we should have covered this in the beginning, but your ED, what was like the focus of it? Was it more so, and I guess I don't really like categorizing them just because I feel like a lot of people struggle with so many different variations of
Like
them, but what
overlapping
was yours, the main focus of it for you?
for my eating disorder.
Yeah.
I would say definitely losing weight, losing fat, especially because it was just over TikTok. I saw like I wanted to look up like really quick workouts because this is when I was really innocent. Like I didn't know what I was getting into. And it was
Mm-hmm.
like how to get rid of hip dips. I'm like,
Mm-hmm.
hip dips. And like I didn't really have them at the time, but I did have like like a muffin top, like whatever that term
Yeah.
is
Not
online.
a perfectly cinched waist,
Exactly.
basically.
Thank you. Thank you. That's the word. And sh- I don't know. I just like got so into it. Like I really wanted to lose whatever. And so I did a lot of ab workouts, Chloe Ting, and then I did a lot of like oblique workouts and that kind of just like I guess enlarging the problem. I don't really, it was never, should never have been a problem. But that was definitely my focus. And then with that came the calorie counting, just so I can
Got it.
get to my goal. Um, Not fun, not fun.
Yeah. So I guess so you kind of mentioned that yours was more exercising, right? And then it kind of led to food.
Yeah.
Okay. So
Yes,
then
exactly.
with the food, with the calorie counting, did you ever have um like overeating or binging episodes, or maybe if your mom was like I don't know, overeating, or I don't I don't say overeating in like a negative way, but because I know binging is like a medically used term, so I know not everyone deals with binging to the degree at which they classify it. But did you ever have experiences like that then? And do you think it related to
Yeah.
like how your mom ate or someone else in your family ate growing up?
Yeah, totally. Like I was restricting a lot, so at certain points in my t like life, I got really hungry. So I was definitely overeating, and sometimes, like all throughout eighth grade, I would overeat at every single meal, and that was just really unhealthy. Like breakfast, I was overeating. Lunch, overeating. Like even when I packed for school, I knew like, oh, I would still be hungry. Because there's that term extreme hunger when people go in ED
Yeah.
recovery, like where you've restricted so long, like you're gonna be hungry for a while. And that's what I was going through at that point. And then dinner, overeating, especially because I was at home and everything was just accessible to me. And
Mm.
that was a result, I guess, like of my mom, because sometimes she would like restrict in the morning and then eat a lot at night. She's like, eat light in the morning, eat light for lunch, and then eat heavy for dinner. And I felt like that was just really ruining my mindset because I was hungrier than the confines of eat light for breakfast, eat light for lunch. Like I was hungry. And I had, like my mom said herself, like I had more muscle than she had at that age. And with that, you need more food to support that. But I wasn't listening because, again, I was uneducated at that time about science and things like that. Um, and then stress eating itself,
Hmm.
like I said, it did sprout from kind of that binge restrict
Hmm.
cycle.
Got it. Okay. Yeah, I think like a lot of people, it stems from social media is a big part of it, but like the household you grow up in. So I think like recognizing that you can have opposing viewpoints and also kind of figuring out where these habits stem from has been really helpful. And extreme hunger, I remember I literally just was mentally like ravenous. And then even if I was full physically, I just keep eating. And I was like, what the hell is going on? Like, this is scary, not having any control. But I think that's just a part of recovery, I guess. And I had to go through that. And because you've been restricting for so long, so you're just all the cravings and hunger
Yes,
cues that you've kind of ignored, they're all popping up at one point because you're finally honoring them. And they just
exactly.
hit you like a truck all at once. And you're
Yeah.
like, what is going on? Um, so I think like recognizing that that's okay, because like you said, you were kind of freaked out and you thought it was bad that you were eating so much, but like sometimes you just need to because you haven't let yourself for so long. And then also what you mentioned about because you said yours was when you were 13, right? So more so
Mhm.
in middle school, early teen years.
Exactly.
So I think at that age you're also growing so much and your
Yeah,
mind,
yeah,
your brain's growing, physically your body's changing, and like you just your body needs more food and feel all these activities and these
yeah,
changes. And I think that was something I've had to recognize is okay as well, like your body changing and needing to feel these processes. And
yeah,
like even coming into college, like I've noticed my body's been changing because I'm like almost 21 now, so obviously my body's going to be different than it was even in like junior year of high school or something. And if I have these periods where I need to like eat a little more or something, because I'm a little bit hungrier, like it could be because my body's changing again and it needs more fuel to feel these processes. But um, I had one other point too. I think it was just with um, like body change and then also um, what's the other one? Oh, periods as well. Like
oh, I was about to get into
if
that.
we can talk about that and like if you ever lost yours or what your period, like whatever the cycles have looked like, and then also like getting hungry right before them
Yeah,
and like eating more food on them and kind of body image with that as well. I
yeah,
think we can, for the sake of time, I feel like I've already taken up so
definitely.
much.
Wait, I would love to do another episode like on that.
Yeah,
Yeah.
we could do another one on that. But I think I'm trying to see. I think okay, I don't want to like go too over. I want to respect your time, but I think are there any other topics that you wanted to talk about for this one or
I think I mean, I would just touch on what you said, like, when you're 13, you're 14, even like 17, like my age, you're still growing. I remember vividly that I would look up online, is it normal to gain fat on your back and waist for women in puberty? Because I was just
mm,
trying to find like some scientific evidence to cope with the fact that I was gaining weight. And
yeah.
that's what I did. And then I actually did lose my period for a while, and that's when I knew, okay, you really need to head into this recovery, like get
Mhm.
into this journey, girl. But yeah, I would just touch on that lightly. That's definitely something I experienced.
Awesome. Yeah, I think that's like a whole another conversation. So we can save that for another episode because there's a lot to dig in with that. But I guess my last question sort of is if you have any advice for other high schoolers, teenagers currently struggling with their relationship with food, body, and or exercise.
Yeah, I would say specifically to anyone who's in eating disorder recovery, whether you're going through a bad body image day, a lot of bloating, a lot of uncomfortability, you're fighting fear foods and any like eating disorder voices, know that every single battle is going to be worth it in the end. And essentially, even though you are doing things for your health and your mental health, which is very important, do it also for the fact that you're recovering for your culture, you're recovering for building memories and nourishing your soul, because that's in the end that's what life is about. Like, I don't know if I've ever heard my grandma say, oh, I'm so glad I didn't eat rice that day, I didn't eat carbs. Like, when you're old, you're gonna remember what made you happy, not what made you annoyed or sad. Try not to listen to diet culture, and if you're kind of in that mental state where you're feeling really stuck in ED recovery, one thing that really helped me was that add over restrict diet, which you may have heard of, where instead of restricting from your cravings, add something that's more nourishing just to balance out your plate. In the end, you are you, everybody is beautiful. We all have our struggles. It's okay to have them. God gives his battles to his toughest soldiers. So, and he gives you things that he knows that you can get through. Um, so don't try to fight these problems. Just try to find a path to get through them. And eating disorder recovery is very possible for you.
Awesome. I love that so much. You pretty much summed
Yeah.
up everything. Um, but thank you again, May, so much for coming on, for taking the time as well. I really appreciate it. And I also appreciate all the insights you shared. I think this is going to be really helpful for our audience and speaking more to the teenage group and also people who have been reflecting on that stage in their life with their relationship with food, body image, exercise as well. So thank you again.
Oh, thank you so much for having me. I loved having this talk. Every single point it was just amazing.
Of course. And we'll definitely do another episode again in the future to touch more upon periods and maybe diving into this topic a little bit more as well. But thank you again for joining. And thank you again if you made it to the end of this episode for listening. I hope you enjoyed it. If you did enjoy it, feel free to leave a rating on whatever platform you're listening on.
And I hope you have a wonderful rest of your day, of your week, and I will see you in the next episode. Bye.